Welcome to Supercharged by AI, a podcast by AI Portland. I am Megan Notarte, co-founder of AI Portland and partner at Cloud4. I'm joined by Nicole Moores, my AI Portland co-founder and product design manager at Driveway. Good morning, Nicole.
Good morning.
It is bright and early. I was going to say it was gray and early, but it is actually bright here where I am. You are zooming in, beaming in from a company on site today. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm super excited because I brought my new microphone with me. I feel so official.
You're such an official podcaster. So today we are recapping last night's event for those that were not able to attend. We were lucky enough to have an almost 2-hour session with Nicole Merrill of Boring AI, and it was all about AI literacy and AI literacy in the workplace. And I love Nicole so much. I love you, Nicole, too. But Nicole Merrill last night was everything I wanted her to be. She's incredible.
She's a solid Nicole for sure. Yeah, I'm such a fangirl.
I am too. Her pragmatic approach to AI resonates a lot with me. I was talking to some people afterwards, and they were talking about how she gave them permission to be skeptical, but also to explore and play, which are things that you and I are big proponents of. So I don't know, where do you want to start? What were your big takeaways?
Agreed on Nicole's middle of the road approach to AI. She's such a vibrant person. And I think she even said, for someone who works in AI with robots, she really loves humans. And so I think that was just a really nice thread throughout her content and her presentation. I think a good place to start is sort of where she did at the beginning, which was WTF is going on with AI. She did a great job at explaining the totality of AI right now, why there is so much hype, and how you can unpack the hype and know what is super tangible for you and what is going to affect you in the workplace. She had this really great approach, which was you need to look at the jobs to be done, which is actually kind of like a product design thing as well, looking at the jobs to be done and designing for it. I thought it was a brilliant approach to looking at AI.
Let's back that up a bit. The question, I think it came up in the question is AI going to take my job?
Right.
And she was like, well, it depends. And we'll talk about that more in a second. But also, your job is really a series of tasks. So you should break down those tasks, understand what generative AI is good at and what it's not good at, and then see about those things that it might be good at and how it might help you do those.
Yes, totally.
I never really thought of, first of all, I never really thought of my job that way. That is a very procedural way of looking at employment, but it's not wrong, right?
Yeah, and all of our jobs are just, a collection of tasks that we do throughout the hours, days, weeks, months, years. It was interesting. She was talking about, will AI take my job? And it's no, unless your job is to transcribe meeting notes and that's your entire job. That's your task that you do, then maybe,
Yeah, I liked her honesty about kind of everything. I think we talk about this a lot. If you have heard me and Nicole talk or have listened to this podcast, we talk about the fear to optimism continuum, right? And I think there's so many people who are on both sides. And the truth, in my mind, is in the middle. And I think she did a good job with the will it take your job? Yeah, if all your thing is to transcribe meeting notes, it may, right? Or it's going to take that portion of your job. And she provided a lot of really great stats on what's happening in the workforce right now, what CEOs are some are cutting jobs.
Yeah, that was a sobering statistic. I think she said CEOs and leaders, they are really hot for this. Really hot, really want it. They want the efficiency. But She was pretty adamant that these folks are still learning too. Like, even though they want
Yeah.
it, they don't even know what it's good at, what it's not good at, and how their teams can leverage it. And so there was sort of like this, they're learning, we're learning, we can all learn this together sort of thread that I really liked.
Yeah. It reminds me of our conversation with Janet Johnson from the AI governance group. She was talking about how we're kind of in the middle of the tornado right now.
Mhm,
And that is true of leadership. And that is true
mhm,
of people lower down on the org chart who are trying to figure out, like, oh my gosh, am I going to lose my job? I better figure out what's going on. Like, everybody's in the middle of it.
mhm.
And there's grace in that. Let's talk about the it depends thing, because it was a thing that I picked up on throughout her entire talk, which was like, anytime someone asked sort of a binary question, like, is it going to take my job? Is the model trained on good data or whatever, right? Like, it was always like, it depends.
Totally.
And I think like that's such an honest and correct approach, because we don't know everything yet. Like, we are kind of the beta testers of these tools as they're just sort of out and like in the wild, and we know there's revolution happening and everyone's trying to figure it out in the moment, and it depends.
It totally depends. I think we are at a weird time. She also talked about like the lawsuits that are happening right now with copyright and how that could change the trajectory, the direction that this stuff is heading in. And we all just kind of have to wait and see what happens. She also talked about
So
the
go ahead.
way that she uses AI, and there was a lot of it depends on that, right? Like, she said she used it to help her write a talk or summarize her talk, and but she said she would never put health data or tax information into AI. But she said, it depends. Some people have a higher tolerance to putting things on the internet than other people. So you know, it's both.
Yeah, that kind of struck me as like, that it's always been that everyone has a different tolerance for what they're okay putting on the internet,
Yeah,
right? That has always been the case. Some people never put a photo of their children on the internet, ever, right? Or they block out their faces. Like, that has always been the case with the internet, with social media. And my takeaway when she was talking about that was like, we all have to develop our own compass as well. But in order to do that, you really need to understand a little bit more about how these models are trained, what data they use, so that you can make your informed decision,
mhm.
Because she's like, but wouldn't put your resume on one of these tools. And
See, I disagree with that
my
because my
my resume is on the internet.
yeah, like, I literally, when I'm looking
Right.
for a job, I upload it into everything. If I could
Right.
upload it into a hiring manager's brain, I would. Report in, please see me.
Yes. Right. So yeah, like, that was the thing I had a question about, which was just like, I mean, my resume's on a website somewhere that's, I'm sure, already been consumed. If you looked, she showed a big chart of, I think it was OpenAI's GPT data sources, and I mean, it was so vast that entire Wikipedia was one tiny, tiny, tiny slice. So surely my own website has been consumed in some way.
Totally.
But that doesn't mean you continue to feed it, right? You don't want to give it more instances of it. I really liked the way she talked about what AI does well and what it doesn't do well. Like, people assume that it's going to be good at arithmetic, for example, because computers can do arithmetic. So why wouldn't it be able to just like use the numbers and do math? And it actually is not great at stuff like that,
Yeah.
right? So she gave everyone a, what is it good at? It's good at summarizing information, it's good at transforming information, generating new content, data analysis, explaining and teaching and
Yeah.
organizing information. That is really great for people to use that list and be like, okay, looking at my job tasks, what are things that this could actually help with, instead of just like, you know, continually flailing around, which I
Yeah.
think happens a lot.
Totally. Or worse, you have the naysayers, right? Who are like, it can't even do math. It's garbage, And then people are like, well, I'm not
Yes.
going to use that. It can't even do basic math. And they're missing out on the opportunities that it does provide.
Yeah. I think it, probably does okay with some basic arithmetic, but that to me was like an interesting thing because it's just looking at representations of numbers. It's like the text interpretation, not the numerical interpretation.
Yeah, I used it for math the other day to find like year over year increase. You know what I mean? Like that
Yeah.
would have broke my brain if I had to sit down and think about it.
Yes.
And it like
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
it and it told me how it
It did okay.
like, thank you.
Yeah. 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 It's good to have the like guideposts on what things it does better for your job and what things you should not expect it to do well. What other takeaways did you have?
So there was talk in the room and from Nicole about sort of
Oh,
the homogeny
yes.
that AI can create. Like we're gonna run out of human supplied data and then it's gonna be using like AI generated things to create things and that will just lead to sameness. I thought that was really
Yeah.
interesting. And well, there was someone in the audience who was like, what was she like she did anthropology or some sort of like really smart studious thing. Like this is, if we look at history, this has happened before and then you get a sameness, a loss of culture. And I thought, at least on a small level, this happens even without AI. Like being a
That's what I
designer.
was gonna say. Like,
Yeah,
to
being
me,
a
it's an
designer.
extension of social media.
Yeah, you look at like there's trends, right? All of a sudden, every website looks the same. You have a big hero image with the CTA and three little feature buckets, and everything looks the same. But then it just takes one designer to be like, I'm not doing that anymore. Everything looks the same. And then an artist, a creator, they make something different and unique, that
Yeah.
breaks the mold. But we are just like the robots. You know what I mean? Like we still
We
do
all,
that.
yes.
That's an existing thing that happens.
Yeah, she talked about how like the coffee shop aesthetic is the
Yeah.
same all over the world. And I think we see that before AI, right? That's
Yeah.
social media. That's like the
Totally.
reach of like the globalization of social media and the Instagram aesthetic, like everyone's trying to go for. But now you have machines that are churning it out, like they're creating even more of it. I think we'll talk about this in our meetup on April 18th
Good.
because we were talking in preparation about how, if the models keep consuming AI generated content, it becomes very flat. And so there is a need for creators to continue to do their work and to continue to be creative and
Yeah.
continue to provide good data for the world and
Yeah. Nicole talked
for,
about that, right? She said that there would be a premium on, human created things.
I think I posted it on LinkedIn like a year ago, maybe like after ChatGPT, that like it's very easy to detect content that was straight up generated by ChatGPT or any other LLM, and that there will be a premium on authentic content that you can tell is generated by a person. And
Yeah.
I even took it a step further, which was like, we might value typos or things that make it not perfect,
Mm-hmm.
because it communicates to the reader that it was a person that crafted it and it wasn't just like quickly generated by a machine.
That makes me think of like the Native American, and I wish I knew like tribes, but the
Yeah.
Native Americans who wove blankets and they would weave in the mistakes because only things, made from the gods were perfect. So in their own
Yes. Yeah.
work,
Yeah.
they purposefully made mistakes in it.
This is why the anthropologic viewpoint on all of this is so fascinating,
It is. That's why
right?
Janet
Because people
has,
who study that.
yeah, on the
Yes.
governance group has,
Yeah.
that those people with that perspective because they can look at like the scale of humanity, you know what I mean? And see
Yeah.
there are parallels here to the past, even though this is technology, right? On the cutting edge.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's both calming to understand that there are sort of like this long history, and then also like alarming because they see the rate of change and like the things that are happening and the impact on society. But it's like, I get it. I understand why you might have someone in the fray who has that education.
Yeah.
Because you can see things like this. You were talking about massive amounts of data, and I think that it's really hard for anyone who isn't a data scientist to understand the vast amount of data that these models need.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would you need more than the entirety of the internet, right?
Yeah.
And I am reading that book by Fei Li. It's called The Worlds I See. Dr. Fei Li is a AI scientist and was on the forefront of this big generative AI movement. And the book really does talk about like her first foray into building ImageNet, which was like a very early image, I think it was like an image analysis program. And it talks about building that and how much data they needed and stuff like that. And it like really made it clear at like the early levels why so much data was needed, and then you
Yeah.
can, if you read that, you can extrapolate like, oh my gosh, for the things that we're trying to do now, okay, it makes sense to me why you might need more than the entirety of the internet's worth of data.
Yeah. Yeah.
um
It kind of breaks your
I don't know if you've,
brain.
one thing that came up last night was the automation use case.
I thought that was fascinating because she was almost like, that takes the human out of the loop. Like, do you want to do
Right,
that? And like a
but that
lot
was the
of the AI
question.
stuff, like I went to a whole thing that was like, the power of AI is in
Yeah.
automating.
Yeah, in software, I guess if we're talking about like generative AI for consumers or prosumers or in the workplace, like yes, these tools a lot of the time have a human, like the onus on the human to read the output and then manage the output. But I mean, it's not new to have in manufacturing the idea of a lights out facility
Totally.
where that means no human is there. There seems to be two philosophies, which is like human in the loop versus automation, and it's not settled. Like
Yeah,
it's not.
it's
And
not.
these consumer tools, I think for liability standpoints, are really big on giving human power to make sure that they validate output, but at a more, I think, enterprise level and like in manufacturing and other use cases, like there's a hell of a lot of automation happening that's AI. I mean, Amazon warehouses.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
Whenever we
It's a
talk
thing.
about lights out or like automation in factories, I just can't help but think about the Robot and Monk books and like the robots in the factories and like just them gaining sentience, and
Oh,
like
Becky Chambers, if you
love
listen
it.
to our
I'm
podcast,
gonna, as soon as I said, as soon as we posted the Janet one, but I think two is good, and I'll be like, Becky, you don't even have to leave your house. Just talk to me. I love you so much.
what else? What else was like striking to you?
I loved her sort of closing message of be skeptical, use your critical thinking, but also, be okay with not knowing and stay curious, ask curious questions, ask your way into it is something I wrote down in my notes. Ask yourself, what can I learn?
Yeah, I like that too. It's like she kind of encouraged folks within their company to start asking questions and finding out who might be working on things, and like it sounds like that's something that she did personally, but
Mhm.
like who's doing this in our company, how can I understand what's happening, which I think is 100%. Like we need
Right.
to be curious about what's going on, we need to like be informed.
Yeah, and you have the
um
call to action, like, if it's no one, maybe it's you. You know what I mean? Which I feel on so many levels.
Same. That's true. That's totally true.
She also had this really good no yapping like command she gave to a AI in her prompt writing.
What was that? Is it the be laconic kind of thing,
It's not
but
even
no
like being
yapping?
laconic, it's like just be less wordy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that's the direct thing that she put in, no yapping.
No
No
yapping.
details.
I
Yeah.
love to see how people prompt. It's always very interesting. I definitely have from David Van Veen of Goat Digital. He gave us all the word laconic as a
Mhm.
way of encouraging the thing to just not be as wordy and to be more direct. But like no yapping is definitely a more fun version of that.
Yeah.
One of the things I wrote down was you have time. And that really struck me because it feels like, I mean, we say this a lot actually. Horse has left the barn, train has left the station, the
Mhm.
train is zooming away. It feels like I'm behind, right? Like, oh my gosh, I gotta figure this out. The train has left the station. And I think the train has left the station.
Yeah.
Yes, the generative AI train has left the station. But you have time to get on the train, you have time to catch up, to learn what is going on, to understand what's happening and how it's impacting your job or your life. It's not like the train is in another country.
Totally. Yes.
There's
100%. I
time.
wish I wish
There's
everyone could learn about AI with Nicole Merrill. Like that is my wish for everyone.
I know. She's so great. Thank you again for listening to this episode of Supercharged by AI. Subscribe to get all the latest episodes and check us out at aipdx.info for more information.